Tonight, I hope to conclude the budget review by the end of the evening. We will revisit the city's private property rear yard storm water management assistance program, also referred to as rear yard drainage program. Additional information was provided to the City Council by Brian Vanna and Dan Gombeck on February 18th. We will also review the police department budget and the Special Service Area Fund, known as SSA. If need be, the next committee meeting of a whole will be held next Tuesday, March 2nd at 6:30. Before we get started, we will be starting with the police fund. I would like to see if Mayor Marquez has anything to add.
I'm fine, Mary.
Okay. Treasurer Corrin?
Not at this point.
And Administrator Vanna. Okay. With that being said, we will get started with the police budget. Chief Thomas?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Chief.
Perfect. Before we get going too far, a number of aldermen have asked recently or in the past about the Criminal Justice Reform Act and how that might impact different operations. Tonight, I'm only going to talk about how there may impact the budget. Some things that the Criminal Justice Reform Act requires is to go to body-worn cameras. There are a couple small grants, one from IRMA and one from Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board, LETSB. And then it's also a cost that we can defray to the Equitable Sharing Fund, or commonly referred to as the federal task force money. So longer term, beyond this budget, there will probably be some charges against the budget for storage and FOIA personnel or those type of things. All the little minute details are hard to determine exactly without getting involved in the RFPs or bids or whatever we're going to do to look at what we're going to purchase. But in the long run, I don't know that is going to be that big of a cost to us. Another thing that's in the Criminal Justice Reform Act is requirements for some additional training. Again, that's hard to determine exact overall impact. A lot of the training that's in there is for probationers that we already pay for through their basic police academy. But there's also some requirements for in-service officers. But we don't know what type and method of that training is going to be delivered, whether it's going to be online, in person, whether we can train a trainer and then train our own personnel if we have to go off-site. So until some of those questions are answered, it's going to be difficult to determine that amount. The Act also requires mental health checks going forward. We already do those psychological exams for new hires, but it's going to require psychological examinations for all in-service officers as well every 3 years. So that would hit our budget at about $5,500 a year. Not a huge hit, but something that in subsequent years we'll have to budget for. There's some other requirements for expanded reporting and those type of things. Hard to tell again what that's going to cost. We have a new software with Hexagon, a software that we use for CAD and records. We have to look at what data they want to collect and whether or not those data elements are collected through the software that we already have, and what format they want those reports in to see if we can, as easy as clicking a few buttons and run the data and export the data to the format they want. So I know a lot of people have a lot of questions, but those are basic issues that will hit our budget at some time over the next 3 years. But the current budget that we're looking at, fiscal year 2022, we should be very good with the budget itself.
Thank you so much, Chief, for that introduction. And Deputy Chief Norton is with us as well tonight. Thank you for joining us. If everyone wants to open their budget packet to page 99, That is the start of the police department budget. That's the summary page. And then we will turn to page 100, where it begins the various accounts and categories and dollars amounts. So I'm looking at page 100 under police department summary. Are there any questions? And if you could just raise your hand and then I'll call upon you in that area. Mike Corin, and you're going to want to unmute.
I did already. Sorry, two questions on this page. Number one is holiday overtime is reflected at $110,387. Last year, it was $63,000. That seems like a sizable jump. I just wanted to hear the justification for it.
The holiday was changed a little bit because we went to 12-hour shifts, which put more personnel on the street, which is a good thing. But also on those holidays, we pay double time for when they work a holiday. So it adds to a little bit to the budget.
Thank you for that. The second item is the medical life insurance reflected at $585,000 versus $512,000 last year. That seems like a sizable increase also.
I will check that.
20.
I'll just have to check the back if I'm asked.
I believe that's accurate. It's just a calculation against a percentage against the salaries, and I'll verify that those numbers are correctly entered, but I'm fairly positive that they are, or they were.
Okay, yeah, because again, it's last year was budgeted at 512, coming in at 453, jumping to 585, and then ultimately 687 3 years out. So again, just want to have Brian verify that the numbers are appropriate.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else on page 100 under police department budget? Okay. We will move to page 101, starting with animal control, auxiliary police. Any questions on page 101 for the chief or Brian Vanna? Okay, with that being said, we'll turn to page 102. It starts with maintenance vehicles. Any questions on page 102? Okay, with that being said, lastly, page 103, contractual services and capital purchases. Any questions on page 103? Any general overall questions regarding the police department budget that you'd like to ask Chief Thomas or anyone else? Yes, Mike Corin.
Just one other item, Chief. Looking 2 years out under equipment, there's an item budgeted. Typically, we're budgeting about $25,000 for equipment. In next year's budget, we're reflecting $225,000. Any idea what that item's for?
Where I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing the 25,000. What category are you under?
It's in 2023.
Oh, okay. Let me get to a different page.
Oh, Brian's got his hand. I think he has the
Well,
answer.
that's if you go to page 103 at the bottom, that shows 5 administrative vehicles in fiscal year 23. So we show that item under capital, but no money because it's in 23.
Thank you, Brian.
Any other questions on the police department budget? Yes, Tom Klistek.
Thanks, Alderwoman Sullivan. For this upcoming year, are there anything budgeted for community events, general element. I know we have the National Night Out, but anything else that we're doing with the high school, middle school, elementary school, or anything in general?
Yeah, it requires budgeted money. There is a budgeted line item for public relations. It's about halfway down on the page. It's about $3,500. We do, like you said, the National Night Out, Cop on the Top, Coffee with a Cop, number of different initiatives using those funds.
Any other questions on the police department budget? Yes, Tom Belzak.
Yeah, this question's more for, I think, our treasurer. We've budgeted almost $2,300 for the police pension for next year and $25.25 for 2014. Are we thinking those are pretty accurate as to what we anticipate we'll be spending on the pension at that time?
It's hard to tell, Tom. For the current year, as you know, we have an actuary that calculates the numbers every year. After the close of the fiscal year, April 30th, he will let us know those numbers. We'll probably have the number for next year by July. I would hope. I mean, the last couple of years have been going up approximately $200,000 a year. So I think that's where Ryan was getting that increase from. Fingers crossed, as I indicated last week at the city council meeting, the current fiscal year investment performance looks like it's doing pretty well. So I would hope that would help mitigate a little bit of the increase for next year. One of the things, though, that happens with an increase or a decrease in the performance is it's amortized, it's spread over 5 years. So our bogey is we're supposed to earn 7%. If we happen to earn 10%, we don't get credit for that full 3% this year. That 3% excess is spread over the next 5 years. The same thing happens for any deficit. So last year we were underperformed by about almost 6%. The performance was about 1.29% instead of the 7%. So that's approximately 6% shortfall is being spread over the next 5 years. Hard to tell, but I would hope that it would be mitigated a little bit. The other thing the mayor has spoken about before is that at the state level, the Illinois Municipal League has been pushing for reamortization of the police pension. Right now, we're required by the state to be 90% funded by the year 2040. As you know, the council's been gracious enough. We've been funding it at 100% to try and get to that full funding by 2040. But the IML and I guess the state is looking at postponing that or pushing off the full funding date from 2040 to 2050 or 2055. I personally don't agree with that, and that I think it's just more kicking the can down the road. But from a political standpoint, I would imagine that's probably going to be pretty hard to stop at the state level if they decide to do that. The other argument in their favor in terms of extending that is many of the other funds, the fire department fund and a lot of the other pension funds for the state already have a later full funding or a 90% funding deadline than the 2040. So fingers crossed that if the investment performance keeps going the way it is, and as I indicated last week also, the board has approved a slight increase to a little more allocation to stocks as opposed to bonds. So hopefully all those things can mitigate it, but only the good Lord upstairs knows the real answer to your question.
Thank you.
Yes, Brian?
Just so I heard correctly, Mike, I might have misheard. I was looking at some numbers, but the fiscal year 22 is the set number from the actuarial.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. I didn't know if I heard Tom correctly or I heard you, but that is the right number. It's just the 2 years out. Okay.
That's the actuarial number that we have for this.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Brian. Any other questions about the police department budget? Okay. Thank you, Chief Thomas. Thank you, Deputy Chief Norton. If there's a consensus, we will move on from that budget. Okay. Everyone in agreement? Okay. We will move on then to the revisit on the rear yard drainage program. We all received supplemental information on that program. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Brian Vanna and Dan Gombeck to explain that in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, Dan will go through the list, but what we did is we took Dan's numbers, we added, which is our additional 20 projects. But as Dan will explain shortly, those additional 20 projects are not all finalized in terms of ready to go projects. So Dan has the first 10 that he's identified and I believe has a consensus on. So the other 20, even if the council decides to put those in the budget, Dan will still need to work after today's date to solidify that with those neighbors of each project. But Dan, you could take over. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, Alderwoman Sullivan, in respect to the remaining 20 projects.
Dan, you want to go ahead?
Yes, I'm
I can't
sorry.
hear you.
Oh,
Or maybe I can't hear you. No, I can hear you now. I'm sorry. I got mutes. I got computer mutes, Zoom mutes. So you're good to go, Dan. Thank
okay.
you.
All right. Yeah, just repeating, we have 20 projects that are in a hopper that's somewhat unsure. So what that means is there's residents that had an interest in it up to a year ago. Obviously, we did not confirm anything just due to funding. But at the same time, we felt that it was important projects. And while a lot of the residents had indicated they wanted to participate, we didn't want to promise them empty promises, obviously. Also, we included a spreadsheet, and I believe, Mary, that's what you were referring to the other evening in respect to that spreadsheet. So that pretty much is the Bible at this point, in which case tells who's participating, who's a maybe participant, and what the costs have been defined to be. So that's really it in a nutshell. I know that we have, the city council was gracious enough to basically give us a total of $108,512 the other day. Again, we were looking for an additional $135,607. Again, of the $135,607, it's unsure if we would have all of it earmarked just due to a potential participation level. And also, we don't know how many more are going to be coming in this spring again.
Yes, Mike.
Thanks, Dan. Just in terms of that schedule, I know a lot of these have yes and no's depending on the different residents that might participate and those that might not participate. One question, though, it just looks to me, one item that jumps out doesn't have an item 33 next to it, but between 32 and 34, so I assume it's 33. High Ridge Court reflects project total cost of $16, city share $10,306. And resident share of negative $10,000. So I don't know if those numbers were used in your calculations of all these or not, but it just looks at one particular line item, just looks like there's something wrong with it that could distort some of the summary totals.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mike, you're on number 32. It actually should be...
well, right after 32, it doesn't say 33.
Correct, yes. Let me see if I can gather my thoughts here for a moment and recall that one. I'd have to double check that against the Excel spreadsheet unless something was hit accidentally. And yeah, but you're correct, Mike. It could distort the numbers, and I could check that rather quickly. So.
Thank you.
Dan, outside of the 10 that we reviewed and discussed and came to a consensus with last week, and I'm looking at the spreadsheet and I see some, the color coding, and I know there's 20 more projects, but of the 20 more, how many do you see as very viable?
I'd say at a minimal of 15 additional. Probably 12 to 15, I think, will be my best guess based on the conversations we had with these residents, about a year ago.
Thank you. Other questions for Dan about the spreadsheet? Other,
Yeah,
Kenny?
yes, ma'am. Clarification, Dan. 7905 Sawyer looks like it's on your list twice. Once in orange and then again in yellow. Any significance, or is just that, or is this an error?
What numbers are those, Joe?
22 and 21. You got to list it twice. And I'm assuming it's just some kind of typographical error, correct? You'll see 7905 Sawyer in orange. Then you'll see it again. Then again, you'll see it in yellow.
There's nothing after. There's no numbers associated with that after. So it's been pulled and entered into 21.
Well, when it's repeated on line 22, it's in yellow, but then there's nothing that follows it.
Right.
There may have been additional.
I mean, I know 05. I remember project number, Chris project number 21, and Chris project number 22 is what, so Kenny's list.
Right. So what I'm just when you look at the bottom of the page, you see 50 projects.
Mhm.
You don't. That's not 50.
Any other questions for Dan on the projects? Yes, Tom Belzer.
I know you touched on it last week, but are there any issues with our vendor being able to complete these projects? Have you had any conversation with them about basically doubling or tripling what we need them to do this year?
I've had some preliminary conversations with them. It's a matter of getting additional manpower, number one. He feels good. I won't say very good, but he feels good about getting these projects done. He's been dedicated in the past. He's gotten the projects that we've had completed in a very timely fashion where there was ample room for additional projects. So my answer right now would have to be, yes, I feel good about it.
Any other questions for Dan, or does someone have a proposition that they want to put on the table about where we go from here? I mean, I know people questioned the additional, getting the information for the additional projects last week when it was brought up that we had more than 10 projects that we were getting a consensus on. So those individuals who were asking for more information, where do you want to go next? Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I'd like to add those to this year's budget. I've always been a proponent of this program. It seems to me it's a win-win, where it's a win certainly for the resident who has a problem, overwhelming problem when they have the flooding in their backyard, and it's a win for the city of Darien in that it improves the property values of everyone around it. So it seems like this would be a good year for us to do it. We don't have any ditch projects this year to speak. I mean, besides the rear yard, the city rear yard projects. I think this would be a good year to do it, and I'd be in favor of adding that to the budget.
A quick question for you though, Dan. I'm looking at where it says no responses on second letters. How long does the resident have to respond before they get taken off that list?
Basically, we'll do a third letter or additional follow-up for a reduction, in the project, or a reduction in participation from the residents. So in a nutshell, we may have had 3 residents. Out of those 3, let's say that 1 or 2 did not, no response. The 1 had a response, let's say. So we'll do a more thorough follow-up to make sure they do or do not want the project, and if it could be downsized.
Do we have those numbers before we finalize this budget and to go to council for a full vote?
No, there will not be enough time to do that. When we craft these letters, if we were given the authority if this was to be included within the budget, we would start working right away for sending new letters out again to those that we have not received a yes on. And that process will probably take about a month to a month and a half.
Okay.
That's Brian.
Yeah, just to add to Dan's point, like the first 10 projects went to the municipal services and the city council. We would do the same for these. So if the city council were to budget the top number, that would be the placeholder in the budget, and Dan would go forward and solidify those. And because it's over the 5,000, we would come back to the city council for formal authority. Even though it's in the budget, we would come back again.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, Lester.
Hey, Dan, are residents able to get on a payment plan, a payment schedule for these projects?
Yes, we have. Last year, I believe we had two or three payment opportunities, or I should say, granted them, and we've been successful in collecting the full amount. Usually we give them up to a year within the budget year.
Excellent question. Any other questions? So I've only heard from Tom that is proposing that we alter the budget to include additional revenue for all the projects, which would be an additional $135,607. Or do we make it the whole amount, the 282?
I would budget the full amount as an expense, and I would budget the resident share as a revenue coming back to the city.
Okay. So, I'm not muted. So what is on the table right now is to add $282,189 to the city budget in the expense line, with a resident share of $146,582. And that's in addition to the amount we discussed last week, which was a total of $108,513.12, with the residents' expense back, charges back to us in the amount of $35,876. That would be to fund all 30 projects, but if projects don't come to fruition, then it's the budget. The money would not be allocated to something else; it just would go unspent. Correct?
Correct.
Yes, Brian.
But Dan, if in the event that some of the projects listed in the 30 do not go forward, but you'll get calls from residents after the budget, we could still do those projects. What I'm looking at is really the council's approving the amount. I would hate to say no to somebody if there's our other projects that are not funded, because all that would do is kick it into the second year. So Dan, I don't know if you'll have any more projects that come forward, but I would just hate to shut that out, considering we have, we're not sure about the other 20.
Yeah, typically, Brian, we'll start getting those calls late March, early April. That was my intention too, was to basically clean the inventory and have either zero inventory or very limited, again, depending on the calls that will be coming in. But I plan to would like to have them all completed, again, with no inventory.
I'm just doing some quick math here. So that would be a total in the budget of $390,702 for the rear yard drainage program.
What I did, Mary, in my draft working papers, I broke it out into two lines. I don't think I had included that, but for my papers I did. I just don't have that total here, but it would just be those two amounts.
Okay. Well, I guess I just would like to, unless there's any more questions, get a consensus from the council if you are in favor of allocating money for all 30 rear yard projects that are currently being proposed, in the amount of the first 10 being 108,513, and the remaining 20 being 282,189 in terms of project cost estimate, then contribution back to the city from the residents would be 35,876.44 for the first 10 and 146,582 for the remaining. Yes, Brian.
Not to complicate things, but Dan, maybe you could just remind everybody how the formulas work, because the council's looking at a list of 30 projects. Those final numbers for each project, again, may vary depending on your bid prices, depending on the number of people that end up participating. You might get a couple that don't. So maybe just refresh all of us on how that might change from project to project.
Sure. The easiest project I can't explain to you is a project that's worth, let's say, $6,000. Of that $6,000, the resident and or participants would contribute $1,000, where the city then would pick up the $5,000. So that's one of the most, the smallest amount we have, and that's been a policy that's really been in place for a long time, along with the expanded policy, which there's a spreadsheet to, and it really equates anywhere from approximately 70% to 74%, 75% participating level on the city side. There's different factors for townhome associations or multifamily, but regardless, there's a formula that basically states if this, then that, and everything is taken from there with the amount the residents contribute, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so my point was, though, Dan, the council's looking at 20 additional projects with cost estimates. Now, when you get the bids and you come back to the council, even if you were exactly right on your bid prices, those might be subject to change depending on how many people participate. So, it's probably a pretty good number, but that's why, just reminding the council, they are really approving the number. So if one project on your list for whatever reason came in 5,000 lower and another project came in 5,000 higher, we're still fine to do those.
Correct. And I'm sorry, I misunderstood that, because sometimes.
Thank you for that explanation, Brian. So we're not approving these projects line item by a line item. We're approving the total budget dollars to be allocated.
If it was a perfect world, we would, or we bid out a car to be the exact number, we would do that. But this is a little bit different. And Dan has done a great job on these price estimates over the years, but there just could be slight variations, just so the council's aware.
Thank you, Brian. Any more questions about the rear yard drainage program? So do I have a consensus from the council to modify the budget to include the total amount, which based on my math would be now $390,702 for 30 rear yard drainage projects, possibly, and with a resident reimbursement estimate, which would be revenue of $182,458, with an overall cost to the city of $208,244.
So, Mary, are you asking for hands up from the council?
I'm asking for hands up,
Yeah.
gentlemen. Yes. So I see Lester Vaughn. I see Ted Schauer. I see Tom Belzak. Is that you? Do I see you, Joe Kenny? Is that a yes?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So once again, gentlemen, I'm sorry if you could raise your hands. I got Tom Plistek, Lester Vaughn, Tom Belzak, Ted Schauer, Joe Kenny, Mary Sullivan, or Eric. So everyone's saying yay to the modification to the budget for rear yard drainage. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for that. Thank you, Dan, for the explanation, and Brian.
Thank you. We'll get it going.
With that being said, the last outstanding item is page 18 of the budget, which is Special Service Area Number 1 Fund Budget.
I'm sorry. You still have, if you're going according to memo number 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. I jumped right off of. Okay. Going back to, thank you, Brian, for pointing that out. I got a little excited. I got ahead of myself. Okay. Going back to the City of Darien memo dated February 18th, page 2, we just covered the number 1 item, but now we do have to go to number 2, which is the Capital Projects Fund adjustment. Account number 25-35-4815. Backup material was attached to this memo regarding the 83rd Street light, Manning Road retaining wall, Bailey Road repairs. Dan, do you want to discuss this?
Sure. In respect to the 83rd Street lights, I'm not sure if anyone of the council members had an opportunity to drive through there, but our recommendation after Brian and I had further discussion, we kind of looked at the corridor and said, do we really need that many lights, and so on and so forth. So the goal was, number 1, was to create a boundary agreement that is sensible, whereas today it's erratic. Based on that, we would then come back in there. We would remove any poles, and even this year, we would remove any poles that were deemed dangerous, hazardous, and not replace them. We would also look for the opportunity to remove the poles, if need be, right away at the intersections, at 3 intersections, and or any potential critical areas at the prices we already have on file for a light pole replacement. So, depending on what the Village of Woodridge says and does, and we come in agreement, we are not looking at spending that $162,000. The $187,000 as proposed, and revising the budget to $25,000. Is there any further questions on that?
Yes, Brian.
Dan, just to clarify, Dan had mentioned that the boundary right there between us and Woodridge, it's really messed up. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. That's what it doesn't. It's not like a line runs down the road and gives a definitive, side, which is ours and which is Woodridge. So that's what Dan means by the boundary is kind of messed up over there.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else regarding the 83rd Street light? Okay. Dan, do you want to talk more about the Manning Road retaining wall?
Sure. There's 2 locations on Manning
There
Road.
is, by the way, there also is, if you look at page 7 on the attachment to the memo, there is more detail on the Manning Road retaining walls. Go ahead, Dan.
Sure. In a nutshell, there's 2 locations along Manning Road that have these retaining walls. The retaining walls were built many years ago, just due to the salt and they've been deteriorating. Those bricks or those blocks that are in place are not really blocks that are prone to have salt residue, and things of that. So they basically have rotted. And they're disintegrating. We did replace the top caps and a couple of pieces of stone several years ago, but now it's to a point where they need to be replaced. We need to replace them because if those start to come down, we'll have further erosion. It's one of those items where there's a grade difference, and the only tool that you have to be able to fix that grade difference is what they call blocks. And these blocks are structural blocks designed specifically for this application. Today's blocks are a lot different than what was put back in then. There's more varieties, different colors, and different styles. So that's that portion of it. The second portion, or the next line item, is the Bailey Road right-of-way repairs. If you recall, the owners of the property came to the city council last year and requested the city to do something about the right-of-way there, which is in not very good shape. There's a lot of erosion there. With the erosion that's in place, a lot of the tree roots are currently exposed. Also, the grade in there, it cannot be maintained to a turf and or any type of mulch setting. So with that said, what we're looking at is a combination of some retaining wall, minimal retaining wall, removing the trees or saving the trees that could be saved. And that's based on the root system, coming in there with new plantings, whether it be trees, some native plantings, some turf, and basically restoring it to a condition that's maintainable.
Thank you, Dan. That information is on page 9 and on regarding the Bailey Road erosion restoration. Any questions, Eric?
Yeah, and just that Manning Road is in my ward, and that one of the walls is like 6 foot tall, and it's crumbling into pieces and stuff. And you know, as kids as they walk along the top of that wall, and it goes for about 100 feet, 150 feet.
Close to it, yeah. It's about 100 by the time it tapers back down.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, right now it is a major safety issue. And this is something I brought up to Dan last year about getting that wall fixed.
And just for the rest of the council members, this was a item that was in the budget last year.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Eric. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Yes,
Mayor.
Brian.
Well, Mayor, not on that project, but just a reminder, I mentioned it to you prior to the meeting. There is one project that was the council talked about last week. It's called the Woodlands Lights. And we had an estimate there of 44,000. Dan's bid has come in and he has reviewed that with the Municipal Services Committee. That final cost is at $71,200. I think, Dan, you probably are coming to the next council meeting with that. So I've adjusted my draft budget to reflect the actual price.
That is correct.
It was.
We had 44,000 in the draft budget. The final bid price total is 71,200.
Thank you, Brian. Ted, were you going to ask something?
Yeah, Mayor. I was just going to say on the retaining wall, I think the last time we replaced it, I literally had just gotten on the council, and it normally lasts about 10 years, that area. So it's past due for it. So for the Manning wall, it should be done. So
Thank you, Ted. Any other questions about these items? Okay. I'm going to take them individually just since they're not all similar. So I just want to get a consensus to move forward with the reduction in cost for the 83rd Street light project. Can I get everyone to raise their hands who's in favor of that? Okay, I got a consensus. Then for the Manning Road retaining wall at the cost of $80,000, can I have a consensus to move forward with that? Okay, and lastly, the Bailey Road repairs for the erosion and restoration. Is there a consensus to approve $80,000 for that? Okay, looks like we're in good shape there, gentlemen. Thank you. I think we are good with the item number 1 and item number 2. And we've already taken care of the police department. So then we will move on to special services area, number 1 fund. Page 18. Is there any questions on the SSA number 1 fund? Okay. With that being said, can I have a consensus to approve the SSA special fund number 1? All those in favor? Okay, great. Well, does anyone else have any other items that need to be discussed? Mayor Joe.
Thank you, Baron. Can you hear me? Okay. Probably a lot of people have forgotten, but this September is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Darien and the City of Darien and the Chamber of Commerce are joining together to develop a committee that will plan events over a 2-day period. The theme is Darien Remembers 9/11. And that weekend will include a parade, a picnic in the park, a concert at Carriage Greens, and the running of the Darien Dash on Sunday. They're moving the Darien Dash to Sunday. We have contacted the schools. All the superintendents have been contacted. I've heard back from 2 superintendents who very much want to be a part of this. We are asking for the children who probably weren't even born when 9/11 occurred to write papers about what 9/11 means to them. We're asking teachers to incorporate that in their lesson planning. We're asking the high school students about the possibility of doing artwork, as well as the primary and junior high kids doing artwork. So we're really looking at something that goes beyond just the weekend. Dan and I have talked, and Brian have talked. Dan has money in his budget to do banners. We're looking at banners that would be placed on the light poles on Cass, as well as 75th Street. That would basically have the theme Darien Remembers 9/11. We're looking at having medallions made that we, with a design that would incorporate a design that we've come up with, or we will come up with. We have booked Carriage Greens for Saturday afternoon at 2:00. Mr. Broderick has given us the golf course and the parking area for a concert. We have inquired with the 144th Guard, which is a musical group that will play for free. Although we do have $3,000 budgeted in our budget for a concert and $2,000 for management. We are also looking at incorporating ideas from the outside groups. While April and I will be working hand in hand on this project, we're going to be developing a committee. I've already had 2 of the superintendents say that they'd be willing to have an individual serve on that committee. This would be a different committee than our gala committee or a Citizen of the Year committee. We're looking at a lot of ideas for that weekend. What we're really saying is that we really, after COVID, civil unrest, racial unrest for the last year, we want to do something for our community that gives people an opportunity to reflect on who we are as a country. And while 9/11 was a tragic event that rocked our society, we felt that by commemorating the 20th anniversary of that event, we could provide residents with an opportunity to take a little bit different look at their world and our community. The parade would be made up of first responders, and it wouldn't just be our first responders from Darien. We would be inviting Hinsdale, Burr Ridge, Willowbrook, Westmont, Woodridge, all of their fire departments, all of their police departments to join us in the parade. We have asked the school superintendents that if the children want to be in the parade for their school, you could, for instance, have a car that represents Lay School. It says Lay School Remembers 9/11. And one of our secondary goals is we really want to develop a more positive attitude towards our first responders than currently exist in our society. We think this will assist in that. We are going to encourage letter writing as well, in terms of letter writing from children to police officers, to firefighters. We're looking to have a poster contest. So we're looking at a lot of ideas, and we have money for banners budgeted in the budget. We have money for the concert and the management of the concert in the budget. And we're going to probably have to look at Brian's contingency fund for additional money for our medallions, possibly for our food. Now, we're going to be looking for community organizations to participate. I'm going to ask the Lions Club, and I already talked to several Lions Club members, and I said, you're going to run a 4th of July parade this year, and their hope is they will run a 4th of July parade. And I said, well, would you be interested in running a parade on September 11th? And there's a lot of interest there. I'm going to talk to Historical Society. I'm going to talk to the Park District. We're going to talk to a lot of different groups and ask these groups to participate in this weekend, that weekend, as well as activities that take place in the school prior to that weekend. And again, the theme is Darien Remembers 9/11. April came up with a couple posters. This is one, but these are just things she did quickly. We want the children of the community to understand the event. We want them to understand its impact on our society, on our nation. And again, they weren't born. A lot of them weren't born. So we want them to have some understanding of that. I wasn't born till way after Pearl Harbor, but I have a good understanding of Pearl Harbor because my family talked about it and I studied history and kept on reading about it in history. We would like these children to understand the impact that 9/11 had on their life. So this event has a number of goals. It is to provide a weekend for our community that we feel will get them out of the house, to give them a chance to gather, give them a chance to look at history in terms of what's going on in our world, and it will give our children an opportunity to understand an event which has significance to our country. So we will be looking for some money in the budget for this event. And again, this is going to be a chamber project along with the city. We're going to only ask other groups to join in with regard to participating in ancillary events. We have a lot of the weekend laid out already. And again, like I said, I have 2 superintendents who responded to an email I sent today and said, let me know what you want us to do, and we will do it. So I'm real excited about that. I'm real excited about the weekend that we have planned. If several of you would like to participate with us on this committee and be part of it, you're welcome to do that. Input is appreciated. And again, I will be making an announcement of this Monday night at our city council meeting. We will be putting out information on our Darien directive next week. And we're starting. We're on our way. I talked to Brian. I've talked to Dan. Talked to Lisa. Everybody thinks this is a great idea. I even shared it with, like I said, a couple people in the Lions Club who are in leadership positions, and they seem pretty excited about it as well. So I'm looking for your support, and I'm looking for your assistance. And if you have any questions, I'm always happy to answer.
Thank you, Mayor. That sounds like an amazing lineup. And, it is hard to believe it's been 20 years. 2 of my 3 children were born then, but, they do try to teach our youth in school. But I think hearing from the community and the community reflecting on 20 years later is critical. And it sounds like you've got some great things planned. I would suggest maybe like we do for the vehicle sticker, maybe opening up an opportunity to the young people in our community to design the poster or design a logo for the event that can be used on everything. That might be, something that could be done since there's enough time between now and then to do it.
Well, if you remember when we had the gala,
Mm-hmm.
we had posters in business windows. We want to come up with posters. I'll give you, for instance, when we finish the parade, we go to the park, we have a luncheon, we have a microphone, we have a brief speech, we have students who will come forward, that will read their papers. We'll have the posters that the children made commemorating 9/11. So we'll give people a reason to be at that park that afternoon to see that. And parents will not turn down the opportunity to listen to their children talk. And they won't turn down the opportunity to have a nice meal as they listen to their children talk. So we're going to provide an opportunity for people to get out of the house, to join us. And again, the concert taking place at Carriage Greens, that's a go.
The group is pretty sure they're going to be able to join us for the day. Again, their name is the 144th Guard, and they play all kinds of different genre of music, but they will concentrate on patriotic themes that day. And if we have food sales at that concert, that's something we need to determine to have. The following day will be the Darien Dash on Sunday. And again, that's going to start in Tom Belzak. They need to talk to you or Doug Barnes. But April wants to start that at the Swim and Rec Club. And they want to end that at the Swim and Rec Club. Rather than start it over on the park, they want to start it over at the Rec Club. And the theme of the Darien Dash will be the 9/11 theme.
Yeah, they were planning on doing that last year before the COVID.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions for the mayor about this?
Yeah. Any questions? So I have an unlimited budget.
Or are you asking right now?
We haven't.
We have, like I said, we have 3,000 for the concert, 2,000 for the management concert.
And Dan has money for banners in his budget already. So we don't know what all of our costs are going to be. I'd like to have at least an additional $4,000 or $5,000, but we may not spend that. It depends on whether or not we can get a lot of the groups within our service groups within our community to volunteer their services. In other words, will the Lions Club do the parade, and will they take the responsibility to do the parade without cost to the city? Those are the kind of questions we'll be asking. Ryan.
Yeah, as the mayor mentioned, there's, we were planning for 3 events, but we were really unsure about that due to COVID and when COVID would, when everything would be opened up. So there's money in there in the event that we only have 2 events. I think there's definitely sufficient money in there now. Should we have the 2 events and we need some additional for the idea the mayor's talking about.
So at this point, you're not asking for a set amount of additional funding in the budget? Mayor?
Tonight was more of an opportunity to share the concept with you and to get your preliminary feelings on the weekend. And again, it's not just the weekend, but it's what we plan to do with the schools in terms of the educational value for the children and for the community. I mean, I could see us putting something in Darien Direct Connect every month, every 2 weeks regarding 9/11. I'm looking at September 6th, having a proclamation declaring that Darien remembers 9/11 month in the city of Darien, and possibly having some first responders here that night for that meeting. So there's a lot of possibilities, a lot of things we could be doing even beyond just that weekend. And a lot of this will come together as we formulate this committee, this group of people, and we get more ideas from others. Right now, April and I have come up with a lot of these ideas. I've shared some of this with Brian. Brian has given me some feedback as well. Deanna has given me some feedback. I really could use the input from some other individuals that will go out and look for. The school people are critical because we want to get the kids involved in what's going on. Brian.
Yeah, just one other comment. After you had talked to Dan, Dan came over to see me and he did volunteer to be the first one in the dunk tank. Should you get a dunk tank for the event? So hopefully that'll work out.
Right. I'll be the first one to get in line. I'll be the first one to get in line and throw.
I thought that was a water balloon contest.
Oh, that's great.
Egg toss for me. Well, that's excellent.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Brian.
Mayor,
we look forward to hearing more about that. Yes, Lester.
Mayor, have you thought about incorporating some of the high school students in the band selection or with the concert? I know some of these kids have bands they put together and they might want to participate in the music.
We want to get a group that will play a patriotic theme. The 144th Guard is a well-established group,
and they're doing this for free. So
I'm not refuting. I'm not refuting that, but are we going to incorporate the kids in that too? Like I know they're going to have their set, but can Are you going to incorporate the high school kids, or I know one group. I know one group in Darien called Liger. They participate in some of the Donis Grove events, but they're like a rock band though. But it'd be good to have some of the kids perform. Basically,
we basically want to keep with the solemnity of the day, though. I don't know if I want a lot of loud rock music on a day when people are commemorating a tragic event. So we got to be careful about the type of music we have.
Okay.
Well, we're going to bring that. We have an idea for the high school students. One of the ideas is that we would we'd get 3,000 of these small American flags. And what we would do is we would have the high school kids find a plot, possibly even here next to City Hall, where they would do a design of 9/11 with the flags, where from an aerial point of view, you would see 9/11. The high school kids I could see doing that, maybe the art department at Hinsdale South High School. We'd like to do a montage of what happened that weekend. There's a lot of film footage on that day in history. It shows different events. We'd like to put that together and utilize some of that possibly at the concert, or incorporate that in Darien Direct Connect on a week-to-week basis. So there's a lot of ideas left.
Thank you, Mayor. And Lester, I have one of those band kids at the high school who also has a rock band. So I'll be lobbying for them to be involved in some way as well. Maybe not the rock band, but the marching band does do an amazing job. So I'm sure if not the parade, something they'll be engaged in.
Lester, they'll be with singing maybe. Tom Klistic.
Yeah, Tom Klistic, your question?
No, I got the Darien Dash shirt right now, so we're ready to go.
Yeah, they're going to print the Darien Dash shirts this year, and they're going to put a 9/11 logo on the shirt sleeve. So it's going to be a special shirt this year.
Wonderful.
Joe, did you have a question?
Only if Lisa lets me.
Okay.
Hey, so that's gonna be on a Saturday and Sunday, correct?
It's going to be a Saturday and Sunday. 9/11 is a Saturday.
Right.
9/12 is Sunday.
Right. So we could possibly do a Friday night. We probably could do a Friday night concert, make it a whole weekend event, and then to Lester's point, we can add that on the Friday night to open it up, and then you still have the Saturday and Sunday. Make it a whole week. Make it a 3-day weekend.
We could plan an event for Friday night. You're correct.
You admit that I'm correct on public. Just to let you know, okay?
Yeah, you're just going to want to be mindful. I know that traditionally in years past was the same weekend as Darien Fest. So obviously not the last year or the year prior, but also you might, if you're going to look at earmarking Friday night for a concert that involves the youth, that might also be a football game, a home football game at Hinsdale South, which would conflict. But I'm sure the committee will come up with a lot of ideas to make it a full and rich weekend to commemorate 9/11 and involve all ages of the community. So thank you, everybody. Any other questions regarding the budget or next steps? Yes, Mike Korn.
Thank you, Mary. I'd just like to reach out and thank a couple people that are behind the scenes that you really don't get to see, that really are instrumental in putting all this together. Number one is Lisa Clem, who really, if you take a look at this budget and all the pages and everything that she's had to put together and summarize and put in binders, and then she also handles a lot of the technical ends of this to try and get us all where we can be seen and heard and everything. And she really doesn't get a lot of credit for that. But Lisa, thank you. We certainly appreciate that. And there's a guy behind the scenes too, Joe, and I don't even know his last name, back in our video room that's videotaping all of this, so the residents can see it. He's been doing this for years, and it does save the city money because we don't have to hire somebody from an outside source. And Joe, again, whatever his last name is, I'd like to thank him. And I know he's wearing shorts tonight. I saw him pop out from, is he? I'm sorry?
Joe Schmidt. Joe Schmidt. Joe Schmidt.
Smith? Oh,
Schmidt.
Schmidt. Okay. Joe Schmidt. Shout out to you, Joe. If you want to come and get out on camera, you probably don't. Yeah. Thank you, Joe.
You and Lisa are like a little silhouette on the screen.
Thank you. And I'd like to echo those sentiments as well. Truly a team effort. A lot of hours, a lot of weeks and months and planning go into getting us to this point to review. And I'm very, I'm the chair, but I'm just like a talking head up here because all the work has been done by others with the mayor and meeting with all the department people and with Brian and a lot of work. And we're very grateful for presenting us with such a comprehensive and detailed budget. And I'm very pleased that it appears tonight we have successfully gone through the entire thing in 2 meetings instead of like the 5 that were potentially planned. So basically from here we go, we're going to wait a little bit. We're going to hit the pause button and we will have the budget presented to us April 5th for a vote at that city council meeting. I'm sure some tweaking will take place in the meantime because some time will pass and more information will be presented. But if there's nothing further from anybody, if I can get a motion to adjourn this meeting by Joe Kenny, a second by Ted Schauer. All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay.
Mary, great
Thank you,
job.
everybody.
Great
And
job, Mary.
We will be together on Monday coming up for a city council meeting. There will be no admin finance meeting since we've had these meetings. So we'll see everybody, I believe, in person at 7 p.m. for the pre-council meeting. Thank you, everyone, and be well.